Okay, thank you, Mark. With this, I'd like to introduce Greg Horry, who will be presenting curl this evening and telling us how we can use curl for fun and pleasure. Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, can you see my slide here?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about curl. My name is Greg Horry, and I think everybody here I've seen before, so I'm not sure that I need to go through introductions. But I've been working with Craig and the folks here doing the presentations and sort of playing with the uh, the NetSig group and with the VicPy group for the last couple of years. Um, this presentation is going to be on the command line tool curl, and we're going to go through a little bit of history about HTTP, and there's a little bit of a hodgepodge at the end of different fun with curl activities that we can get into. These exercises that we go through with these is part presentation, but it's also going to be part lab. So I encourage people to participate in the lab section, and there's going to be lots of time, hopefully, to go through and just give things a try on the command line. I did post in the comments. I'm going to try to do this because I know this is a challenge sometimes with the commands. So I'm going to try to post all the commands in the chat window, so you can just hopefully copy and paste from the chat window and then give it a try without having to try to see what's going on specifically on my slides. So if you do have any challenges with that, please let me know. So let's first start off with a bit of background. So what is curl? Curl stands for client URL, and you can see that in this way that they like to spell it. It kind of emphasizes the URL part. It's both an open source software library, libcurl, which I believe is written in C, and it's also a command line tool, just curl. And it was first released way back in 1997. So it's been around quite a while, pretty much since the early days of HTTP. It's compatible with both IPv4 and IPv6. I won't be specifically looking at the IP layer, but we'll see actually what comes up during some of our sort of trace of the protocol. It's typically used to transfer data through various network protocols. So the most commonly used protocol is HTTP, but there are a number of others that I will outline shortly. And it has a number of excellent features. So for HTTP, it supports TLS and certificate validation. It supports various HTTP methods and header manipulation. We'll be going over lots of examples so that you get a feel for what those are. It supports multi-file transfer, so it's possible in one command. You can download multiple files. It has proxy support. It has transfer rate settings, so you can be a little more respectful to websites and not beat up on them. And there's a lot of other capabilities with curl. It's a very flexible tool, been around for a while, and it's still well loved. And that's why we decided to give a little presentation on it. And I thought I'd just stick in this slide so that you have some appreciation for the number of protocols that curl can support. Of course, I'm not going to have time to go through all of these during this this lab and presentation, but I do have these ones that I've decided to pick on. So HTTP will be the primary point of discussion. There will be one slide with 8 FTP examples. And then I don't know, I've decided that I'd like to try dict because I was playing around with it and I was a little surprised about some of the fun stuff I could do with it. So I thought I'd give a slide for that as well. So we'll go through a brief history of HTTP. So I'll be starting back in version 0.9 of the protocol. And as you probably know, HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is one of the most ubiquitous protocols on the internet. It's used in our browsers and also used these days for many API calls. In the early days of my IT career, we didn't see HTTP used as much for APIs, but nowadays it's very, very popular for RESTful APIs in particular. So we will be going through some examples with that. HTTP 0.9 started off 1991. It was a very basic protocol. So it was a client-server interaction and just a simple request and response. The client requests were ASCII encoding, so it was an ASCII character string, and the server response was also an ASCII character stream. These ran over a single TCP/IP session, and they were designed. It was designed specifically for hypertext documents transfer. So, in other words, HTML documents. The connection between the client server was closed between each request. So this is a kind of important part of the early protocol. It was very simple, and it did not, as you can imagine, this isn't the most performant way to do things. So we will be discussing as the protocol evolves how this has improved, but that's kind of the early stages of the protocol. Any questions about that? I can turn off. Is that distracting? Oh, this is in Google Slides. Yeah, it's got a little laser mouth thing. So I just turn on. uh, so for version 1 of the protocol, this kind of developed in parallel with version 0.9, as at least what I've read. And it went from 1991 to 1996. So during that period, you can imagine we had a lot of browser development. So there's the days of Mosaic and Netscape Navigator and so on. And sort of internet growth was booming during this period. So we had a lot of more interest in the HTTP protocol. And during this period, we started to get to version 1.0 of the protocol. I'm getting an echo. Can everybody go on mute? Hello? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So in May 1996, the HTTP Working Group published the RFC 1945. So this was the first specification, as far as I know, for HTTP. Previous, at least from the HTTP Working Group, the previous version wasn't written out as an RFC. At least I haven't found any information on that. One of the things that it added to, informally, there was a number of other methods being developed, but this was where it was kind of canonized, where there was a number of methods started to appear. Up until that point, GET was kind of common, but other methods started to appear, such as POST. Also, the HTTP header started to be canonized at this point as well. They still retain the ASCII encoding. One of the things that started to come into play was status lines, so our like 404 and 200 type status codes. We'll be talking more about that in a bit. And it started to transfer more than just HTML, so other document types would be transferred as well, so images, for example. One of the shortcomings or challenges still with HTTP version 1 was that it was still, for every TCP IP connection, it was still one request and one response. So this still sort of limited performance of the protocol to this point. Any questions up to there? Okay, moving on to version 1.1. So we're getting close to 1997. So you can see actually it's right on the back of version 1. We already were starting to move to version 1.1. So they were developing a lot of this really rapidly in that period because of the interest. So in January 1997, RFC 2068 was released for HTTP version 1.1. And some more improvements came out in 1999 with RFC 2616. Some of the improvements made were around content type, encoding, character sets, cookie metadata. So a lot of these more fleshing out the functionality of HTTP. And also, finally, we get to some performance improvements. So you see things like chunked responses and connection reuse. So we no longer, with the connections, have to have with one TCP/IP session, do we only get back one document? Now you can have multiple interactions, multiple documents being sent back in one TCP/IP session. So this led to a much greater improvement in performance. And as it goes right now, HTTP 1.1 is still, from what I can see, is the most popular version of the protocol, even though it was created many moons ago, like over 20 years ago. There is HTTP version 2.0, which was released in 2012, which focused on more performance improvements. It has lower latency, higher throughput. It's a binary stream rather than a text stream. It's fully multiplex, so rather than sequential requests, you can actually do parallel requests. So you can send out all the requests and receive back all the documents at once. Um, and this is where Google gets challenging. It puts things over my slides. There was oh yeah, there's no changes to the protocol semantics. So in other words, the actual functionality didn't really change in HTTP version 2. All that changed really was mostly around the performance improvements. So function-wise, we basically retain the same set of methods, the same set of status codes, the same headers, but they kept on working on non-functional requirements, so the performance requirements. So any questions about that? There's also version 3, which I didn't actually bring up here. And if anybody has more interest in that, we can go deeper into those topics, maybe in a future discussion, but I didn't go that deep into this. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll leave that for now. Okay. Sorry. So thanks, Mark. Was there any questions then? No? Okay. Let's keep on moving. So I put this lab prep slide. It's already actually in your in the comments. So if does anybody has anybody not have curl? Maybe we'll put it this way. If you don't have curl installed already, can you put a comment in the chat window, and then we can just wait a couple minutes. Otherwise, we can keep on moving. Or feel free to just pipe up. No, I think it looks like everybody's good. George, you got it installed then too?
Yeah, it seems to be there in the DOS window. Like when I typed curl, it said invalid URL.
Okay.
I typed curl ? So I guess it's there in the DOS window of Windows.
Great. Why don't we give it a try? Well, I'm curious to see what your experience is like. So this is the first exercise. So we're just going to go through and we're going to do some basic curl usage, and we're going to go use the vicpimakers.ca site to do some of these examples. I will cut and paste these. Hopefully I can get them into the comments window here. Yeah, looks like they'll go. And then you can, if you want, we'll take a couple minutes and then we can have a discussion about them. So why don't you give these ones a try? Really what I'm trying to get you to do here is just take a look at each individual invocation of the command and then try to understand the differences that you're seeing with what you see there, and then we can talk about that.
So Greg,
Yes.
can you make that text a little larger? Because yes, I can see it on my screen just fine, but when it's projected, it's small.
Oh, can you not get it in the chat window?
No, I'm talking about your terminal.
Oh, I see. Oh, let's see here. How can I make this bigger? Can I just go Control Plus? No.
I think it's under view.
Ah,
There you go. That looks much better. Thanks.
is that better? Okay. Nice. I'll wait for a critical mass here.
Yeah, that as well.
Okay.
I'm done too.
How many folks do I have here today?
Greg, I'm trying to connect on IPv6 and it's failing.
To the Vic Maker site?
Yeah,
the
dash
Bitcoin
6.
site.
So I did the first one, and I got so much stuff on my screen that the scroll back window is not even. I mean, is that normal?
Yeah, yes, some of them are very verbose. So
I'm in a DOS box, right?
yeah, so and that's a bit of a challenge too, is I
Yeah.
don't have any way to help you sort of manipulate that, make it a little more streamlined. But
No, that's good.
it's really about just appreciating what you can get on the outputs. Now, the one that's really verbose, it's really you're just trying to figure out what it's doing, not necessarily read all of the text. And then the other options hopefully should be a little less verbose. So.
Okay. Greg, I'm going to have to skip over to a different meeting. So I'm going to have to leave you guys in about 2 minutes. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So Deed, it is true. The website is not responding on IPv6.
That explains that.
But if you want to see it on IPv6, just change the URL to google.com.
I can do that. Craig, it works fine if I force it to use IPv4.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, one of my things that we probably want to talk about in a future meeting is happy eyeballs and how you get all protected by that.
We move to
Craig,
the. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
when I unmute my mic, are you getting echo?
No, it sounds fine.
Okay, because I've got a new setup and I'm just not sure how it's going to work.
I did get echo just off someone in the during earlier, but it wasn't you. It doesn't seem like. Shall we move on to the discussion? Is everybody ready?
Go.
Okay, let's give it a go. So I'm going to hopefully get lots of answers. I hope you're ready to discuss some of this stuff because I don't want to do all the talking. So there's 5 different invocations of the curl command there. I'm just wondering if someone wants to briefly describe what was going on there, or at least maybe a subset of what they understood.
Well, I'm going to cheat and look at the help to see what location means.
Cheating is okay.
Well, can I ask, are you just trying to get information to go to a computer? Is that what is that kind of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so what's going on here with the curl command is you can think of it as similar to interacting with your web browser, except you're doing it on the command line, and you're just pulling back, in this case, a specific document from one site.
Okay.
So according
Now,
to
what's so exciting about that? I'm kind of missing that little bit.
That's a good question. It's I guess it depends on what excites you.
Okay, but what's going on here? Is this like we're trying to open the door of someone else's internet? Is that what's exciting, or what is the deal here? Like, I don't quite get it.
All we're trying to do is look at a slightly lower level of interaction with this our website here, and then also understand. So part of what the NetSig group is trying to do is just understand the protocol a little more intimately than just your regular day-to-day browser interaction. So in this case, curl allows you to peer, so to speak, under the hood. And so that's what we're getting out of this is taking a look and seeing how the protocol behaves, and then you can get an appreciation for all the things your browser is also doing for you behind the scenes.
Okay, that's kind of fun, right?
Craig, can I throw in a quick comment?
Yep.
One of the things that I've seen it used for a bunch is because notice you're putting this into a script or on the command line, which can easily be put into a script. So that allows you to, as part of a script, rush off to a website and grab data from it or information or something from that website, and then have the script do something with it. So you're used to looking at a website and say, oh, there it is, and there's cats and dogs and discussion. But sometimes you just want to grab a bunch of data and do something with it.
Exactly. Good. Thank you, Dee. That's an excellent point. Like sometimes you don't want to actually, you don't care what's shows you on the website, but you may want to scrape some of the data off that site, or maybe you just want to preserve that document for posterity for some reason. So
Okay,
this allows you to do that.
That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Oh.
So this first, this I don't know if anybody wants to walk through all these, or should I just walk through them? If you're feeling shy, I can do it. So this
I'll
first,
comment on the first one, and
okay.
that is, all I saw was essentially a redirect. 302 not found, the document's moved to, and it just shoves a www in front of it.
Yep, exactly. So this is pretty boring. It's basically just showing you the HTML page that is a redirect document. And so what you need to do to actually get beyond that is this location. So this location will allow you to, option will allow you to traverse the redirects. So that's why we put the location option on the command line here. I shouldn't probably give that away. Someone else probably don't consider it. Now, it's hard to see that here with this option.
Well,
I don't know.
Greg,
Yep.
so without the option, if you scroll back up a little bit, you'll see in the redirect, it's not only just putting the www on it, but it's also changing it to TLS or HTTPS.
Agreed. Yeah, and it's hard to see it with these two options, and that's why I wanted to go to this option here, is to show with the head option, rather than you having to see the whole HTML, which, in this case, you may want, but in some cases you may not. So what would be the reason why you'd want to just see the response headers? For someone like me who does network operations, you may actually want to just see the detail of the response headers to see the rough flow of the HTML documents, and not to see the whole HTML page itself, which has a lot of interesting information, but I don't care to necessarily know that. I want to know that the flow is working correctly. So in this case, and well, I think, Craig, what you're talking about is this the redirects. You can see here that this particular redirect, this one, gets changed to, you were saying, HTTPS. So now we are starting to use encrypted, and we also append the www dot to this. So we get a redirect to a new URL. And then once we get to that location, it actually redirects again, which I'm not exactly sure why it was set up this way, but you can do this. Sometimes it happens many times. So this time we're getting redirected, and we're removing the www dot from there. And then finally we get to the final site, and we get back a document, which is the HTML page that the browser would really care about. Does that make sense?
We can blame Cody because she's not here, I think.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. There might be a good reason for this, and I can't. I'm not actually. I don't administer web servers that much, so I don't really know them in depth. So someone might be able to school me on this information. I just know what I've seen here, and it does bring up some other questions that I don't understand. So. Well, there's also the www gets appended too. I noticed that. Yeah. And I think that's a good example of, so if you're like the web admin for this site, you may look at this and say, oh, why is that happening? Then this is a level of inefficiency, obviously, that you may want to address, especially if you have hundreds of thousands of users that are going through this same experience. It may not seem like a big deal, but it might actually be slowing them down just a little bit and causing that bit of annoyance, and also load on your servers, right? So yep. This next one, verbose, as you can see, I'm not going to go through all the detail here, but you can see that it actually gives quite a bit of information back, including a lot of the TLS encryption, handshaking bits and pieces. It shows you more of the content type, the header information, so all the request headers that are sent. It shows you what other things are interesting here. The response codes, of course, get sent back. Not sure if there's anything else that I care to mention.
TLS version number might be of interest if you're worried about website security and stuff.
Yep, that's another good point. There are also, I think that with the TLS piece, I'm not exactly sure if it changes. You can upgrade and I think downgrade the protocol sometimes too. So I'm not sure how that interaction with curl would reflect with your browser. You might have to do a little more deep dive with your browser too. So I don't know, Mark, if you know more details about that. The last one here was the trace option. So this one, it gets, so if you thought that verbose was a lot, then if you look at the trace option, and I just take a look, you can see that I get some really low level detail here. And this kind of gets down to the TCP dump Wireshark sort of level of showing me packet detail that is part of the reason why I was like, we'll probably leave Wireshark out of this discussion, because you can get down to this level if you really care to. It's not really necessary when you're examining application protocol this level that I'm interested in right now, but it is something that you can get out of curl as well. So I just wanted to show you that that was an option. Questions?
Can you go back to your debug that out?
Yeah.
Okay, go down a little bit further, next screen. So you can see right there in the info where it says connected to www.bigpiemakers.ca. It is, in fact, connecting to a V6 address feed.
Yep.
So not sure why your and my V6 isn't working, but Greg's is.
Mine's better. It's TELUS.
That's
why. Yeah, I don't know either. But is there any other questions before we move on to the next exercise? I think we talked about these other.
Just summary recap. What did we just learn here? Just a summary recap, could we? Sorry.
So I think that the things that it's basically just an exploration of the tool. That's what we're trying to learn here. And so the things that you can see are that you can, one, get back just the raw HTML document. Two, you can get back like a header level of information. So you don't have to see the full header document. You can see just the flow of the actual traffic or packets, I guess. No, not packets. I guess documents that we're receiving. You can see also a more verbose view of that, where you're actually seeing the TLS or encryption interactions. You can also get a full debug output. So there's a number of different options within curl that allow you to see different levels of detail of your interaction.
That's cool. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
No problem. Good question. So we'll move on here. We talked about the redirects. And we also talked about how these different commands are useful. So we're going to move on to the next exercise here. And this is kind of what a lot of people use curl for. I will put this into the comments. Hopefully they paste okay. And again, if you want to give those a try on the command line, and then we can have a discussion. I'll give you a couple of minutes. I'm just looking at the time. I'm thinking, oh, we might have some challenges with time. Let's see how it goes.
Craig, try your V6 connection again. Mine is working now.
okay.
And if you get errors or anything like that, don't. One of the things that I did, this is kind of an experiment. It was that I wanted to actually show errors, some errors in this presentation, and the reason is just because, working with command line tools, or often you do come up with errors, and I think it's worth seeing those as well. So if you do see an error through this process, that's fine. Just take note of it, and we can discuss it.
Yeah, the first error is that's not an O, it's a 0.
That is, yeah, that's a good point. Is that so? The first one is a lowercase o, and the second is an uppercase O. Yeah, I did kind of switch back and forth between the long
How
form.
come they have to be O's? How come they have to be O's? How come there's so many O's and all this stuff?
Well, this is a question for the developers, what they preferred
Oh.
when they created the tool. So it's really a developer choice. And I happen to create a fair number of these tools. So usually the pattern that I'll use is I'll try to figure out what word works and that people can remember when I make switches like this. So when they have little command line switches, this one would probably stand, -O would probably stand for output, I'm imagining. And then the second one, uppercase O, I'm not exactly sure, but it's something to do with output, I would imagine again, right?
So it does relate to words. It relates to words.
Oh yeah,
The O
absolutely.
is a word.
So if you do, yeah, exactly that.
Okay. Sorry.
Mm.
Thanks.
There you go. So it's output. That's what that one stands for. And remote name, what the other one stands for. And you can use these long form switches too. So you don't have to use the short form. You could use the long one as well. I just got lazy and used the short form. And I thought it was worth just seeing that the other thing I guess you should get out of this too, if you're not familiar with using command line tools as much, is that help is your friend. You definitely can use help to get a lot more information. And that will be helpful. You can see there's a ton of switches when it comes to curl. It's been around for a long time and they've developed a lot of functionality. They also have, I think it's manual. There's this big manual too that you can actually get out of it too, which is massive. And I'm not going to go through all that clearly, but I just wanted you to see that that's an option. And then you also have the man page, of course, too. So if you want to see the man page this way, you can go in this. This is another way to do it. But yeah, there's a lot of options for being able to get to some more help. And often people want to see something that's a little more nicely formatted. So you can get the same information by going to your browser and taking a look on the internet too. Don't forget to give me your dones if you're feeling like you're done, or if you just want to move on.
Done.
Can I have the instruction page back?
Oh, there's also, it's in the, I pasted the commands in the chat window. So if you're looking for the commands, sorry.
Can I ask something? And it might be stupid, but can I ask it anyhow?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've got the 0 or the O, and you've got the P or whatever letters you have. Why can't they coordinate or correspond to like specific words so that people who aren't techie like myself could just read it and go, oh, that's what it means? Like, how come it can't be like that?
You mean, so like the one option here is,
There's like a dictionary. So if you get an O, you know that the O means this. If there's a P in the code, the P means, I don't know, perhaps or something. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't work like that.
I'm just gonna, so this is the one option that we have, and it's gonna, someone's gonna describe this. The other option that you have for doing this is, I just wanna make sure that we're on the same page. You can do it like this as well. So you're saying that neither of these sort of suits your scenario. So we have -O and then the file name. In this case, we have -output in the file name. What were you wanting instead?
Oh,
So I don't know, Michelle, if you're new to Unix Linux, but there is basically a single dash and a double dash for options to commands. The single dash usually is followed by a single letter because back in the old days they didn't like to type. And then the double dash is usually followed by a more descriptive word. And so if you don't like the single dash because you haven't learned all the really cryptic letters, there's usually a double dash option that you can use, and it's usually a lot more intelligent.
oh, okay, thanks.
Descriptive maybe is a better term than intelligent.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, back in the late 60s, early 70s, when the folks at AT&T were screwing this stuff together, I imagine none of them could type. So they tried to make everything as short as they possibly could.
Well, I think there's a limitation too on compute resources, right? So short was kind of the way to deal with things, like in general, right? I
Okay.
see. I find so I will definitely resort to being much lazy if I can. So when I'm on the command line and typing something, I would rather type something like this. I probably will abbreviate this even further if I can. But if I'm writing a script where I want this to be a little more self-documenting so that people can read it and sort of understand without looking, like dash O is a little cryptic, dash dash output. Well, that's a little bit more clear. So I would choose to use this in a script if I was creating a script. So.
Okay, I kind of get it. Okay, thanks.
And a really good chance I'd make the output file, I'd call it foo.
I try to avoid foo, although I understand the reference. So, how's everybody doing? Can we talk about this one yet?
Go.
Okay, so I want to move on through the slides and do it that way. So first question, what did each of these commands do? So does anybody want to give it a go and explain it?
So highlighted just goes and pulls the file and puts it into that file after the dash O.
Okay, how about this one then? We get an
As
error.
you can see, it doesn't work.
It's trying to download a file, but there's no file. That's just the site.
That's right. That's exactly it. So this option wants to actually see a file, an actual file reference. So that's why I chose the robots, because I was pretty sure that would be there. So you can actually download, say, one particular file using this, but you can't just sort of point it here. It's not going to find a file. It's just the actual site itself. And that's really it.
Which is a little confusing, Greg, because if you just type it without the dash O, you'll actually see the equivalent of the index.html page.
Yeah, I thought so too.
So I was sort of expecting it to go grab the index.html page, but
I agree. I found it to be an odd, but I thought I'll just leave it in just to say that because I think seeing the errors sometimes is just helpful for people. So I thought I'd leave them in this case. If you think that that's not very helpful, then please give me that feedback, and we don't have to do it next time.
I think it's good because it tells you to go to curl-help for more info. So that's how to get there if you didn't know that.
Yeah. So we talked about this. There was something wrong, and we did fix it. And thanks for those comments, Lynn. And how about this one? This is kind of outside the scope of what the exercise is, but can we use curl to crawl a site? So we're talking about downloading files here. I was wondering, what do you think about using curl to just crawl the entire site?
I imagine there is, since wget can do it.
Ah, so you've already given away the answer that I liked better. So yes, it's true. My answer here was not without some effort. So instead, I would suggest trying this. And there's a wget option. You can try it if you'd like. And I found this to be, paste that. I found this to be probably a slightly better way of doing it. I'll just paste it on here and show you what it does. So I'm not going to crawl the entire site because that's just going to take some time, but you can see it's running along and it's going through, and you can see that it's actually pulling back more than one file in the process. And if I take a look here, it's actually created a vicpymakers.ca directory. And if I take a look at this, you can see that it's actually, I actually didn't pull back anything yet. I guess I quit too soon. see if I get something here. Oh, maybe not. Oh, that's why. Yeah, it's pulling back. You can see it's creating this directory structure at this point as it crawls the site. So if you want to, you can explore wget a bit more, and you could actually pull back all the files off the site if you wanted to. Now, you want to be respectful about websites, not using all their resources all the time. But this is essentially what search engines do as well, right? They'll crawl sites and get information off the web pages to be able to index what's going on there. So.
Something else to be aware of too is that although the website is out there and you can use it, you don't have permission to download it and then make modifications to it and then use it as your own normally.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that I guess respect goes a long way when we're talking about these things. So I think it's very important for you to consider that this isn't just technology that you're interacting with. This is someone's resources. So I think that you always need to be a little respectful about those things and try to minimize beating up someone else's stuff, especially if you have your own ability to say turn up your own web server and play with that yourself. So move on. Next, we're looking at HTTP methods. So I think any discussion about HTTP needs to have a bit of a discussion about methods. So we have some options for looking at methods, and I will paste these here. Oh, is that coming through okay? That last one might be a little challenging. Let's see. Yeah, we'll have to see. Yeah, the quoting got messed up a bit. Oh well. So let me know when you feel that you're ready to move on. Give me a done.
All right, done. Took a little bit to type in all those percents.
Yeah, that last one might be a challenge for sure.
Is that a 3% solution?
Could I ask another question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so just so that I can get it clear in my head, you people are kind of like the posties. You take the mail to the website, to the people's houses, you check their house if they have extra mail, and then you bring it back to wherever they want it to go. Is that kind of what you're doing here?
I'm not sure I understand the metaphor.
Well, you were talking about you either have a bundle that you take and then you scrape the place and then you don't want to use their servers or whatever. So is it kind of like what you're writing is a map to get to a website, inside the website, scrape around for more mail, and then out of the website to deliver the mail? Is that kind of the analogy that you could draw?
Well, the mail is a little confusing just because we already have a mail sort of metaphor on the internet. But I think of it more as just documents. I think the easiest way to think of a website is a place that hosts documents. And so what curl does is it just allows you to be able to get those documents. And in this case, we're talking about HTTP methods. It actually is the place where you specify the actual method is how you specify what you want to perform on that site. Now, a get is kind of maps to a search. We're going to talk about this in a second, but there's also other interactions which we'll talk about. That's what this post and head, and there's another post here, and there's other ones that we'll talk about in a minute.
So if I could jump in a bit, basically, what we're doing is we're using curl to explore layer 7 of the OSI model. And layer 7 is the application layer. So the application layer is using a protocol called HTTP, and we're diving in to see what its guts of HTTP look like, as well as the stuff that's on top of HTTP, which is the actual document that we're pulling from the web server.
Okay, I get. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks, Greg.
Welcome.
So I'm going to bump this along because otherwise we're not going to get through all the slides, and we may have to leave some of this for exercise anyways, but hopefully we can get through most of them. So here, so did anybody have any problems or did you have anything that you want to say about what you found during this particular lab, this exercise?
I guess apparently I still have problems with my percents, but we'll get to that.
Okay, well, maybe I can try myself just to go through that one, because yeah, that one is kind of ugly. I like this one because I thought it was fun, just what it was kind of doing. If I paste, I actually get back this URL, and what this is just a URL shortener is all it is. But it's posting to the site, and then it actually gets back this URL that I can use. So if I copy it and then I bring up a browser.
But we can't see anything of it in your presentation.
Oh, you can't see my terminal right now?
No,
Oh.
or I can.
Oh, I thought that it was sharing the terminal as well.
I was seeing the terminal.
Okay, possible. Let me change.
So you can see here, I've created, if we can see this, and I'm going to call that a mark thing. And I got to move on. I'll bring up Firefox.
Okay, now I see the terminal.
Good. Now, this is the one thing I don't like is that there's escapes here. So I got to remove the escapes to actually make this work. But what you'll see is that it will pull back. It'll redirect from this clean URI site, which is a URL shortener, and then it heads over to the Big Pie Maker site. So I thought that was cute. So I just wanted to give you that example. So I'm not sure if anybody got to that level, but that was what was going on with that particular result. Coming back. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
To be clear on that particular line, can you go back to that slide?
Here.
Yeah. So essentially the fourth line, you're doing a post and you're sending data, but you're not sending data to Big Pie Makers. You're sending data to Clean URI.
Mm-hmm.
And then Clean URI is returning a shortened URL.
That's correct. Thanks. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
So, and that really what I was trying to get out of it is just showing an example of where you can use a post, and do it in a more of a API-ish type interaction. I wouldn't. This is kind of a really a very low. Wouldn't say it's a very interesting API, but getting too deep into it, it's going to take some time. So I thought this was nice sort of shorthand for just showing one type of interaction that you can have. What else did I want to show here?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thanks.
The main thing I wanted to get out of this discussion just is an appreciation of the various different HTTP methods that are out there. We have a number. I'm only showing you a handful here, but there's many more. But these are the main ones. And what we typically do when we're interacting with a website is we're often just using HTTP gets to retrieve documents. If we're submitting using a form to a website, we're often using an HTTP post to post a document. And we also use these things, all these different methods for API interactions these days too. We refer to them often as RESTful APIs. So when we're posting in the API context, typically what it means is I'm giving you a record that I want you to insert into a database. That's typically the interaction that you have. We talked about head already, so that interaction is kind of known. You're basically requesting to get back just the response headers from the web server, not the body. If you're doing a put interaction, then you're asking to change a record. So in this case, you'd be modifying, say, you would give it on the URL a key typically for the data you're trying to modify, and then in the payload, which is often in JSON, then you'd be passing it the modified record. And similarly with delete, with this delete method, you can delete a record from a database too. So a lot of these are not typically implemented with just a regular web server where you're interacting with a website, but from an API context, yeah, a lot of these methods are implemented and are used to actually do both creation and deletion activities. Any questions about that?
That's good.
One other thing I wanted to say here with HTTP methods is that I found with curl, especially when you're starting to interact with it at an API level, that it can get a bit challenging, especially when you get into JSON. So if you're actually getting into the world of scripting with curl, I would suggest that you may want to look at this other tool, which under the covers is a Python tool, but you can interact with it at the command line level and at the sort of bash level as a scripting tool. It's called HTTPy. And the thing that's nice about HTTPy is that it actually will handle a lot of the JSON quoting for you. So you actually get a situation like this where you only have to have a name value pair rather than having to deal with all this quoting. And you're like, well, that's not too bad. This is the most, anemic sort of example I could provide. But once you get into the world of JSON and quoting and scripts, you often are passing variables. And what you'll find is that you'll have to do sometimes some quote escaping to get it to all work. And if you don't understand what that means, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Really, I just want to give you a heads up that if you're getting into the world of scripting with curl, you may, and you're posting against APIs or interacting with APIs, you may want to look at HTTP because I find it to be a much more clean interaction, and it's easier to script with. So that's just a heads up, some tool that you might be able to use that will be a little easier. Of course, if you're comfortable with other programming languages like Python, that probably is the place to go, because to me, Python is just way easier to do all these interactions in general. But if you feel more comfortable working sort of at the bash command line level and you want to just create a quick one-liner bash script, then this HTTP might be a tool for you. Any questions about that? So status codes, I think there's no discussion we can have without looking at a little bit about HTTP status codes. If we're talking about HTTP, I thought this was an interesting pick that I thought was hilarious off this website. There's actually, if you see his URL down at the bottom, there's a whole bunch of different status codes with pics on them. This one has the former president interacting with cats, and of course I can't help but love any interaction with cats, if you've seen with my previous presentations. So I thought that was worth putting on there. But if you want to give these options a try, this is just a quick set of commands that you can use to try to get back some status codes and just sort of see how you can just look at the status codes in HTTP. How are we doing?
I'm not getting the second one to work.
The challenge sometimes sees.
But I might have to typo somewhere. Or it could be those
I have
darn
the same
cents.
problem.
Could be my problem too. Cut and paste. Okay, I think it does work. Shoot. zeros. Really? Interesting. I get 200s. You can see here.
I got 200s too.
First one probably is a little
I
more.
too get 200.
Sorry?
I too get 200.
Okay.
Hiding, of course, in the prompt, but nevertheless 200.
Yeah, that's where my 200 was hiding.
This one, so this first one is probably a little more intuitive. It basically is just pulling back the header information, and I'm just grepping out the HTTP headers from there. This second one, or the second one here, this is probably a little less intuitive, but it's basically piping the output to dev null. So I'm getting rid of everything. And then you're using, it's something you can do in curl is actually pipe out or put out just formatted options. So similar to if you're using like a format, like a printf type option, you can do some sort of formatting like this within curl. And then in this case, it just pulls back the final status code from Twitter in this case. So that's what's going on there. Any questions about the status codes?
Could you? Oh, never mind. Jump in. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So the status codes, I do have an overall sort of slide just here about status codes. So there's 100 type status codes, which I don't see it very often, and I'm not a web server admin, so I don't really see a lot of what goes on with the web server side of things. But these are supposed to be informational responses. The request is received and understood, and processing continues. 200, we all see these a fair amount if we're interacting, especially at the curl level, which is a success. So the request action was successfully received. 300s, we've seen those now too. So the 301s, we've seen the 302s. Those are the redirections. 400s are client errors. So something in your request wasn't quite right and the server wasn't happy. So in this case, one of the common ones we see is the 404. This one here with the president is 405, method not allowed. But we do have these client side errors that we see a fair amount. And finally, there's the 500. So those are server errors. And often, often we see the 500 internal server error. 500 internal server error often is when developers who aren't doing a great amount of exception handling, you often see that you'll get back to a 500. That's kind of the generic level. If they're doing a little more diligence in their exception handling, then you'll probably see more specific code that is not necessarily just 500, but otherwise you often see from the server side just a 500 error. So, any questions about the status codes? How are we doing for time?
13 minutes.
Okay, we might have to skip some stuff.
I'm back and listening.
Okay,
George here.
why don't we give these ones a try? What I'm thinking is maybe we'll skip the FTP and dict ones, and like you can leave those for homework, and then we can get to the fun stuff right at the end. So I probably went a little overboard on this one with the exercises. So here, I'll put these in here. Do these come out okay? How come it wraps funnily, doesn't it? Sometimes in the comments. So I posted those in the comments if you want to use them. This is just an exercise to explore request headers quickly too, because I didn't think that we could go without at least doing a little bit of request headers. This is a real skim of the topic, but I just have some appreciation of the things that you can do.
Are we doing the Twitter or the NGHTTP2?
It's the NGHTTP2.org. Yeah.
Hey, Dee, could you stop sharing your screen? It's a little confusing. Oh, I see. It's a dead Dee that's sharing a screen.
Oh, is that right?
You, the admin, can kick the
We
dead
need to call the doctor.
Oh, yours is wrapped much nicer than mine. I'm done.
Okay. So Craig, you want to try to explain what happened there?
Well, for me, it looks like it's basically querying the server to see what protocols it supports.
The other part here, and this is the part I thought is that it actually upgrades the connection to HTTP2. So you can see here that it actually goes to HTTP2, and that's what this is here. So you're actually manipulating the headers and you're asking for a connection upgrade, and it actually complies with that. Apparently this doesn't happen very often. Like you can't do this with a lot of web servers, but in this case you can. And I think this was set up as an example site for that purpose. So the first one is still negotiates and you get back the HTTP 1.1. In this case, the second option where you passed the HTTP2, it actually creates a couple headers for you. So you'll see it actually creates these headers, and that actually works to upgrade the connection to HTTP2.
So when I type in the HTTP2, I get unsupported protocol.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why
And you're
you're
going
getting that.
in.
And I'm in DOS, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's something there. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, mine works, but I was using a capital V rather than a little b. So now it's working.
Okay, I have 7.58, Mark, and George. I'm not sure what version. You said what? 7. What, Mark? Oh, that's close. That's interesting.
And I'm using 7.64.
Yeah, that's the only, I mean, that's my guess too, is it would be version issue, but I can't say for sure.
7.55, 7.55,
Maybe
1.
maybe 7.58 was the cutoff. Not sure.
I've got 7.69 and it worked fine.
Okay.
So if that helps.
So for the discussion,
Greg?
Yes.
I'm seeing the error message HTTP2 curl option HTTP2 is unknown, and mine is 7.19.
oh, yours is quite old. Yeah.
Yeah. This is CentOS 5, I think, so that I'm running.
Oh my.
Which is, yeah. I'm of the opinion if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Oh, that was end of life though, dude.
We can help you with that upgrade if you need.
I've never upgraded a Linux system. I just buy a new computer and put a new system on it.
That works.
So the main thing I wanted to show you here is that you can manipulate the request headers, and you can get back different responses. That's really the gist of it. This I thought was an interesting exercise. It's also interesting to see that that I didn't realize that we wouldn't all have consistent behavior. So I thought it was probably ways long enough with this HTTP2 that we would see the similar behavior, but it's kind of interesting to see. You can do further header manipulation with the -h or -- header option. So you can get into a lot of detail. You can have multiple of these if you want, and I've had to do that with some interactions with curl. One thing to note is that is different than the -i -- head option, which is you asking for the server to send back only the response headers and not the body. So just be cautious when you're interacting that there's a -header and a -head, and they are different.
I have a question. I know I've had to be careful about the headers that I send to the server, whether they're text or other types of I guess you can specify JSON. I guess that's going to the server though, right?
So those will be specified in the request headers. Yeah, you can.
But we're not doing that here, right?
Not. I didn't do that in this exercise, but I think what you're talking about is manipulating like the content type.
Yeah.
Which is definitely possible, and
Okay.
and you could do that with the this header option if you wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to, because we're getting a little short on time, I'm going to skip the FTP and dict, although I thought they were fun, and I can leave those in the slides for if people are interested, they can give those a try. And the reason why is because I really want to skip to the fun stuff, which is the last two exercises. So this is all kind of fun. I just thought I'd sort of show some other curl options you could play with, but I thought this one was probably the best, only because it represents some work where I think that I would like to call them passion projects of people. And I just thought they're really kind of almost inspiring for me, because I was like, oh, I should give it a try to do something like that. So we're not so much examining the protocol as looking more again at some people's implementation, where curl can be used to pull back some fun stuff. I mean, you don't have to do it with the browser. You can just do it on the command line. So give these a try. I created this alias because I just wanted to have something a little more succinct. Basically too lazy to type curl with a wttr.in. So I set this up instead, and then I can just go wttr and then pass these options this way. Exactly. Well, this is something I put in my bash RC. I only have to do it once, right? So. But it's pretty cool, actually. I was really impressed by these stuff that folks have done. I've actually seen this before with Telnet, if you get a chance, if you can get this one working, but I hadn't seen it with curl, which I thought was really neat too.
Yeah, that last one's pretty fun.
I don't know. I don't really know how long it goes, to be honest.
You mean we don't get the whole movie?
I don't. Maybe. I'm not sure. I've never stuck it through, but I'm pretty impressed with how far they got. So this is. I know. I was like, what? This is crazy. Look, it's got like lightning bolts and stuff. And so the alias here, I just built this because I like to make it a little easier for me to interact with. So say I want
How
to
do you get music out of curl?
I don't know. That's a good
I
question.
mean, there ought to be with this French one. There ought to be the Star Wars music, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never like when I see things like this, it kind of inspires me to explore it further, right? I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool. What else could you do?
Well, if you played an MP3 file, or I guess technically a WAV file, and piped it output into dev sound, you'd probably get music.
Yeah. This one is cool. I don't know if did anybody try this qrenco.de? Did you see this one? This is cool. So you get the QR code. If you could try it with your phone, if you got a QR code reader, you can get to the. So this one is actually creating the QR code for you, and then you can go to the VicPi Maker's site based on this QR code. Amazing.
Yeah,
That's right.
it depends on your terminal type. Mine looks rather ugly.
Oh, sorry. And then the finale is this, which has been done before with Telnet, but they built it with curl and interacting with HTTP, which I'm like, really? That's awesome.
So this is just one curl request, isn't it? And all of this comes back.
Yep. You got to be a true fan.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like the guys who are recreating Commodore 64 chips.
Like the fact that they built all these things, I'm like, really? Wow, that's crazy.
By the way, we got a request. Is there anybody who wants a Commodore 64? We got somebody who wants to donate one. And a TRS-80. And some books of the same era.
You can see it just kind of does the clear screens. I don't know that I haven't actually gone through the whole thing. I'm assuming
It's painful to watch.
you feel like you have to kind of endure it for a while, but I haven't actually gone through the whole thing. I just think it's pretty amazing that they put in the effort. So
I just tried to open this in a browser, and it came back with web browsers are so 2019. Use curl HTTPS : / blah 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 from your terminal instead.
So that's all I had, and so just a summary. Curl is an excellent tool for command line interactions with internet resources. It's commonly used with HTTP, but supports many other protocols. I wanted to go over FTP and DICT, but unfortunately, just running out of time, so I'll leave that for homework if you're interested. And if you're not using it, I would consider adding curl to your toolbox because it's definitely a very useful tool. Also, would say looking at wget and this HTTP are also useful tools to consider for your command line interactions with websites. So, and that's it.
Thank you, Greg. Excellent presentation. Hands clapping.
Thanks very
Yes,
much.
thanks a lot.
Thanks, folks.
Greg,
That was fun.
can you send me the URL and I'll go ahead and post it to the NetSig directory
Yeah, we'll do.
for the presentation?
Yep. You want? Is it okay if I send you the PDF again? That's how.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Just for the folks who don't know, we are posting old presentations or the previous presentations. Maybe I should phrase it that way. On my website, NetSig, which I can share here in a minute.